So now for our next session, and one that I'm extremely passionate about driving as the chair of the Programmatic Trading Committee, diversity and inclusion. How can we make programmatic more accessible? Vytautas will lead the next panel of experts in a discussion to address how we can demand and drive diversity and inclusion in the European digital advertising industry today. So over to you.
Thank you, Nick. Thanks a lot. Happy to be here, and thanks for inviting me. It's a topic that is quite dear to me as well. We are a full stack programmatic platform out of Europe, but only 25% of our team sits in Europe. So happy to share and happy to discuss with the panelists. So maybe we can start with a round of intros, and then we'll dive into the discussion.
Sure. Should I go first? I'm Jacqueline Boakye. I'm VP of Customer Success at PubMatic. So managing a team of customer success managers and operation managers as well. So great to be here.
Then I continue. Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda. I'm building up the global programmatic consultancy group at the ShowHeroes group, which is an organization for edtech products. And we have over 20 locations worldwide.
And I'm Michael Olaye. I lead business development for EMEA at IAS, working primarily with programmatic platforms and social platforms.
Great, thanks. Thanks for the intro. So I thought that to kickstart this discussion, I would like to just share a couple of research that we came across by preparing to this. And I'd like to start with a short screen share, talking about some of the data. Why are we talking about this, right? And Gallup and Harvard Business Review recently published a couple of researches where they talk about diversity and inclusion, not only from the point of view that is the right thing to do, but also as a business case for diversity. And what they're saying is that diversity and inclusive cultures, lead to engagement, which lead to innovation, and then this leads to better business outcomes. And just a couple of data points here, that a combination of engagement and gender diversity, only gender diversity, leads to higher financial performance in the 58% of the cases. And then it also increases the innovation revenues. But to achieve that, there are certain threshold targets that need to be met. Organizations only experience success or growth when, even if we're talking about gender diversity, the female manager percentage reaches and exceeds 20%. And then the results or positive results can only be felt if it's not only diversity, but also inclusiveness. So if there's diversity, but the culture is not inclusive, the positive results are not there. So that's why I guess we're talking about both of those topics combined. And I guess we can start maybe this discussion from a challenges point of view. In your opinion, looking at the European digital advertising industry, what are the biggest challenges that we as an industry, companies within those industries face in those markets? I don't know, Michael, do you want to start?
Sure, yeah, happy to. I guess first I'd say that I think that we've done a lot in recent times in order to be able to further the conversation around diversity and inclusion. I think that's wonderful. I think that across the industry, there is an ever-increasing commitment to champion D&I as a movement, and that has to be applauded. But I think it's clear that there's still much to be done. Otherwise, we wouldn't be discussing it. There's been a WFA report that pointed out that in their recent D&I guide, that there's so much to be done, that has been done in order to improve representation, especially of women. You alluded to that as well in what you've just shared. But I think that the industry needs to do a lot more in order to be able to promote broader inclusion. And I think that there's still a lot of lapses there. I think where we've got a lot more work to do. So from my standpoint, just to talk about seeing what a challenge respectively would be, I would say it's just something as simple as seeing people who look like me at the top of the tree. When we look across media and programmatic as a whole, I don't think that I'm seeing, from my perspective, as many different diverse people that would allow me to be able to understand that this is the industry for me, this is what I need to be striving for. So for me, it would be that. How do we approach that?
Thank you. Jacqueline?
Yeah, I definitely concur there with Michael. I think it's that image of coming in and being able to see from the bottom to the top that you are represented in the company. And I think that we're progressing, but I think there's still a lot to be done. And I think that's why it will always continue to be a topic. It has to be a priority. It has to be something that becomes the normality that we are striving for, rather than it's a moment in time that we have to try and get a solution for. So this has to be ingrained into businesses to realize that we do have to invest in diverse audiences, in diverse people within the business. It's how a business becomes successful. And I do think it's about accountability as well. And I think we're starting to see that in the industry as well. So businesses are taking a stand. They are making sure that they are bringing in organizations to support them. Now people can go to people's websites and companies and see what is their actual diversity, equity and inclusion statement. What do they believe in? Or how would they be representing me if I join that company? So I think there are strides have been made, but I think there's still some way to go. But what I do, and being in this industry as well, is that I think if you look at our industry and compare to some of the other industries, actually there's a bit more diversity there. If I was to take maybe, I don't know, finance, would I see so many Black people up in the higher chain within the business? Maybe not. So I think it swings and roundabouts. So I think from our industry, I think let's continue to make those strides.
I think in addition to what you both said, most important, like one of the challenges is that we are not only talking about that, but I'm really happy that also like finally in this programmatic space, this also becomes a topic. So everywhere it just pops up. But generally, I really think that the real challenge is not only to talk about that or have like those values on a website, but really live with that, because we all as people want to be valued for what we are. And as soon as we start working somewhere or work with another company, we can feel if this is real and honest or not. And I think this is the real challenge, not only to have this as a new buzzword for the next company, but to really live it and mean it. And I think this is also what a company should strive for, to just have the real impact and the opportunities which come with that in the mind, and not only the point we need to do that because everyone just does it now. And if we don't do it, we are not part of that. So it really has to come with an honest standpoint.
Sorry, if I can, I very much want to echo what Amanda said there. I think it's super important that it's not a gimmick, but it's organic. And I think the proof's in the pudding when it happens. And I think it's also sometimes quite clear when it seems like it's a gimmick. It's important to talk about, but it's got to be done from, exactly as Amanda said, from an honest place, from an organic place.
Yeah, so some of you mentioned, I think the challenges are there. The industry is moving at a certain pace, but then talking about the opportunities, and then in general, but also what the companies can gain, getting better in D&I. What is your opinion on what are those opportunities? Which kind of signal why should we do this then, and why should we focus on the topic? Who wants to start?
Yeah, I think diversity brings around new ideas. If you look at businesses that have more diverse audience, and more diverse people within the business, you come up with newer ideas. If you're not bucketed into one way of doing things. And I think that's the innovation part that allows people to move forward within businesses, where you collectively can have different ideas, different views, but be able to build on something that's amazing within a company and be heard. Again, that inclusion part is making sure that businesses hear from everybody and they take into consideration those thoughts. And I think once you become that kind of business and that organization where you understand and value the people that you bring into the business and what they can really bring to the success of everything, I think that's when you start to feel the impact as a business. So yeah, that was what I would say is where diversity is really good. And it's a big reason why I like to work in an industry, or at least be in an office where there's diverse people, because you have diverse views and we don't all want to be the same.
Exactly. And we are all working in the advertising industry, which lives from creativity and innovation, which is driven by diversity and innovation. And this is not only for us why it's so important. Generally, this is a super important topic, but this actually is a key factor for us, which would drive our business. So it's actually a win-win situation to focus on this and having a big part, which is, I don't want to say again an honest part, but like a natural part maybe of the company.
Yeah, I think you demonstrated earlier on what effect having diversity can have to even the bottom line of a company. And it's important to help companies understand that it is in their best interest, a win-win, like Amanda said. Another thing that I would say that I think is quite interesting, again, going back to the WFA report, it is very interesting if anybody wants to look at that, but it highlighted that agencies who obviously we work with a lot in this industry, very much leaning into D&I, and they've got champions to this cause, and that has been very evident. But as an industry, I think it's also become clear that we're not quite practicing to a certain extent exactly as we preach. Because if we look, taking it back to a working environment, if we look at keywords that are being used, words like gay, LGBTQ, Muhammad, Islam, so on and so forth, all of those kind of words, due to legacy reasons, are automatically blocked. And as a result of that, that's stopping advertisers from appearing next to content that they would actually want to be associated with. So if, as an industry, we want to be able to move forward, things like that have to also be taken into consideration in order to be able to actually move forwards.
Yeah, thank you. So I think we'll get back to this topic because I think you touched also the topic of what can we do as organizations to influence some of the things outside of us and not only focusing internally. So I can just share as well, I think what is also important and what we try to practice is focusing on strengths of people and then talking about the values and the benefits of diversity. We do these team grids in terms of strengths, and there are some tools that allow us to do that, like Clifton Strengths Finder and all similar tools. And then you see naturally that when you combine a lot of the different cultural experience, you have a much stronger team. So you can even measure that based on the team grid and numbers, where the more diverse the team, the more kind of strengths you cover within your team and within your leadership team. And that's very important, not to be one-sided. So just sharing some experience here as well. But yeah, continuing on what you mentioned, Michael. So we talk about the internal companies, but then there's all of that external world, which you touched a bit. So what can we do as advertisers and as platforms when it comes to supporting diversity outside of our organizations through the budgets, the policies, the things that we do that then influence minority publisher groups or some kind of different views and different cultures? Have any experience or anything to share in this?
Us personally, we don't play directly in a place where we would have publishers come in and evangelize them, so on and so forth. Just to go back to what I was obviously referring to earlier, what we want to do is to be able to continue to educate people as to how these kind of practices can be avoided. We do have things in place. I don't want to make this a technical conversation. This is a conversation about D&I, but obviously I work at IAS, and contextual avoidance and targeting and suitability of things that are in-house. We have tech that basically caters to this, that allows us to be able to allow people to actually create targeting lists that are based around D&I. I would ask agencies to be able to come to us and look into this so that we can work together in order to be able to eradicate these legacy ways of targeting and blocking that really are quite inhibitive to being able to work within the environment that we actually want to work with when we want to be able to promote positive sentiment around all forms of diversity.
Yeah, thank you.
Just to touch on what Michael was talking about, and I think this is very true, and I think you are starting to see agencies put commitment into D&I, but on the other side, you've got the publishers as well, where it's more about how do you bring the data together? How do you match who the audiences are? Some of it's been sensitive over, previous years, and it's now about really talking about it in the market. And so I think us as an SSP, for instance, we're having those conversations with publishers to make sure, how are you segmenting these kind of audiences? Are you working with your DMPs to do it? How are you tagging your websites? All of those things. And then at the same time, it's working with the agencies to make sure that they know that those are the kind of groups that they could actually start to spend on. So I think there's definitely work to still be done there, but it's all an educational piece, I think. And so I think everyone needs to be invested in making sure that happens.
Yeah, in addition to this is also one of the challenges the advertiser side is facing, because this also becomes more and more relevant, and exactly those features or tools or mechanisms like scanning sites for key values, having semantic matching, and so on is something what is then so relevant for campaigns, because how to have this contextual connection to all the different words of diversity and inclusion. You cannot just have it with cookies or identities of those identifiers. It has to be deeper, it has to be more contextual. And this also needs to come more and more from the demand side, because if they want to have that for their campaigns, IIS is capable of offering support with having your solutions. Also, ShowHeroes can offer our solution, because we are also scanning semantically the sites we are working with. So there are already the possibilities to have those campaigns. It just needs to be requested more often. And what we can do is also educate the advertiser side and say, hey, we can do this if this is relevant for you, because maybe they are not aware what technically is actually possible for us.
Great. So shout out to the agencies and to the demand side. So it's all possible. Cool. So maybe then moving to more the practical side, and can you maybe share what are you doing? What examples do you see in the market, not necessarily within your companies, but outside, practically, to ensure more diversity in digital markets? Jacqueline?
Okay, yeah, I was just taking a bit of a think on that one, but I think, so one thing that we have done, and I think it was interesting to see, is so you've got, I think it's how we try to make sure that we are bringing in those diverse groups into the industry. So there are companies like MEFA, Media for All, Brixton Finishing School. There's just new groups that are setting themselves up now to make sure that we can start to bring those new diverse audiences in. And Michael touched on it earlier, just making sure that people feel that this is an entry point into the industry, and this is an industry that they would feel comfortable in. So I think there are definitely companies now that are focusing on making sure that the right messaging is happening in terms of bringing in those new people from schools. It starts at the educational level, university, and making sure that we can bring those groups in from a younger age. And I think that's what's going to be interesting about the industry. And again, that creates that diversity, the different level of thinking, and that helps the success moving forward.
Yeah, I think, having employee resource groups are going to do a lot to be able to create a safe haven so that people can communicate, but then also get a little bit more of buy-in from senior leadership teams and the boards and the execs to be able to have a more in-depth understanding of what they need to be doing and the people that they need to be listening to. Jacqueline touched on it. Brixton Finishing School, I think, is an incredible initiative. I've been blessed to work with them in the past, hope to be able to do so again in the future. And there's also the Women Programmatic Network. That's an incredible initiative as well, and continuing to grow every day. I think something that we'll be doing at IAS will be that sort of internal training of people from different ethnicities and genders in order to be able to ready them for promotion internally. I think if we are talking about how we're going to make the exec team more diverse, I think at a point, typically when you want to go and look and hire potentially externally, you're going to see a sea of, to be honest, white cisgender males. But if we want to be able to make that more diverse, then what we need to be able to do is have internal training to be able to allow people to be able to be promoted from within. That's something that's within our control. So that's something that I think we'll be looking to do more of at IAS.
I'd like to catch up on what you both said before, because I love what you said, Jacqueline, about also having people from the university being approached by this, but also on the other level. With this, we need to see, okay, what would be the best approach for what position in a company, or is it a student still, whosoever. So for each person in the industry, there needs to be a special approach. And not for everyone joining groups will be the solution of that, because there's like a lot of self-initiate needed. But if, for example, there are internally, I don't know, task groups offered, or also coachings for the heads or team members, which you can participate in, education for the different levels, like those are, I think, the basic things what each company should provide, so everyone can be part of that. And what I also like is having exchange programs, especially if you have different locations worldwide, that you exchange people so they will see the culture, the people who are working there, but also learn how they are working, what they are focusing on. Communication between the different cultures is so important to better work with each other and have a more efficient way of working together. And in general, I think that what everyone can or should do is just being sensitive to this topic and listen to the people, even though you cannot sympathize to what they have experienced because you're not in the same body. You cannot feel that. You can still try to understand and listen. And I think if everyone would try that more and more, not only in the work surrounding, but also like in life in general, we will get all more sensitive about this. And I think it's important also to speak up if you see something is not fair, or you don't feel like, okay, you don't understand why something is happening like that. Everyone needs to stand up and speak up, or find a person you can speak to. And a company should provide like a safe zone where you can talk about that. And if the people do not feel safe in the work environment, they will not have a good outcome for the company. And yeah, everyone needs to feel valued in the company and in general.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. ERGs, I think, have been a very useful resource for us, especially in PubMatic. And I think we've got 7 now. But I think on touching on that as well, I think what was good is that we started to do a diversity, equity, and inclusion report. So we're doing an annual report. We've got newsletters that go out quarterly. So it's making sure that we, again, like I said, it's not a topic that's going to go away. It's ingrained into the business. We've taken advice from a business, a consultancy outside. They've come in, they're really coaching us, they're building a strategy with us. And I think that's really helping. And actually that's making sure that people feel that they can talk, and we are giving the training to the managers to make sure. I think one training we had was unconscious bias, and conscious and unconscious bias. And it was interesting to just, when you sit with different groups, to see how things are valued or how they see things from a different lens. Definitely I think it has to be that continued educational piece within the business and people talking. So to what Amanda said, it's speaking up, it's talking, it's making sure that if you see something, allyship, all of those things, you support your members and your team members within your organization.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned a good idea on the reports. I think what gets measured gets improved as well. So focusing on that, then it goes to practical things. So I think we're out of time, but maybe any last thought that got missed out of in the discussion? Anyone wants to just last 10 seconds, 15 seconds?
For me, just to continue on from what Jacqueline said, I think you have to measure it and you have to make people accountable, which she also said, because if we aren't accountable for making diversity and inclusion, if we aren't accountable, then we're under no obligation to move forwards. And I think we all accept that this is something that we have to do. We have to understand what our company actually looks like. So those surveys, those things like that are truly very important to be able to really understand the makeup of how diverse as a company we really are, and measure that up against the company, other companies, the country, whatever it might be.
Yeah, totally.
In addition to that, also create diversity and inclusion positions, specific people who are responsible for this and driving that throughout the whole company. And yeah, just one last thing, anyone can contribute to this and can open the eyes and speak up and see around. And I think we all need to be more sensitive in this regard. And yeah, this will already help a lot.
I think my last 3 points would be just make diversity a priority, keep making it a priority, because it's really important. Challenge the biases around it. We need to keep thinking about making sure that we are an equitable playing field for everybody. And then the inclusion is the last part. The inclusivity is really key, I think, in making sure that you can maintain a healthy, nice environment for members within your team. So I think those are the 3 actions that must continue.
Great, thanks a lot. Yeah, so I just will mention that I guess this is a great opportunity as well to increase the attractiveness of organizations, because everybody talks about talent scarcity, but the more diverse the organization is in the outside and looks out the outside, definitely you'll just naturally attract a lot more different talent. So yeah, thanks a lot for the panelists. Over to you, Nick.
Awesome work. Thank you, Vytautas, and for moderating, and to all our panelists for shining a light on how we can bring diversity front of mind, the actions that can be taken from talent through to marketing practices and principles in order to make our industry more accountable and a leader in inclusivity. And diversity does and should encourage innovation within not our industry, but not just our industry, but in our organizations as well. Yeah, fantastic session.